Greetings everyone, peace to you all. Welcome to another episode of Praiseworthy Reviews, where we go through video games to see if they are excellent and commendable. Today, we will be reviewing Androger, a rather unique visual novel game by Teary Hand Studio and published by Kodansha. Players play as Sophia, a protagonist who wakes up confused about where her father has gone. As usual, we will be evaluating the game based on 5 criteria: fun factor, educational value, cultural value, spiritual value, and cost. For context, prior to this review, I have played many visual novels, such as the Ace Attorney series, the Danganronpa series, and some of the Science Adventure series, and I have finished this game to the credits. So without further ado, let's jump in. Androger is really hard to review, both in scripting and in video editing, because of its short length and the mysterious nature of the narrative. However, I will do my best to convey the general nature of the game with as few spoilers as possible. As mentioned at the top, the game is essentially a visual novel type of game where the primary form of gameplay is just advancing the story. However, there are sections of the game that are more specifically gameplay. Essentially, much of the interactive elements of the game involve manipulating a button, pressing it, holding it, and dragging it through a series of short WarioWare-like objectives. And that's basically it. The other aspect of the gameplay is the part of the game where you are supposed to figure out what to do without instructions, because the game never really gives you any. This may seem like it would be frustrating, but for me it never got to that point. I always figured out what the designer wanted me to do before it made me uncomfortable. And just as I said, that's it. There's no combat, no bosses, no puzzles, nothing really but the story and how the gameplay enhances the storytelling. While rather simple, the gameplay is very well done and it does enhance the narrative, but it's difficult to explain how or why without spoilers. While the gameplay is not innovative, it does feel intentional, meaningful, and immersive, so I'm going to give Androger 4 stars for fun factor. There's little in the way of educational knowledge here, especially given how short the game is. There are motor skill tasks, but they are not really particularly challenging and you won't really improve in hand-eye coordination throughout this game. While there is no explicit factual knowledge taught, I'm going to say that the game is somewhat informative regarding the experiences the protagonist has and the conditions that she is in. Yes, that's vague, but again, I'm trying to do this without spoilers. I think the developer could have worked a little harder in making the game more educational, but perhaps he thought too much would detract from the pacing. Even so, I'm going to give the game 3 stars for educational value. The cultural value for the game is quite high in almost every way but the sales numbers. The visual style, while simple, is very artistic, and I particularly enjoyed the artist's choices of thicker lines, and especially his use of color. The animation could have been better. The comic-like style is a choice and does work, but I'm not sure that it's better than actual animating. The music and sound effects do a good job in contributing to the storytelling, and some of the tracks are quite moving and really work for the pivotal moments, making the end of each chapter very emotional. There is no voice acting, but I enjoy the different pitched tones used to emulate speaking. The setting is relatively unimportant, almost completely abstract. The characters are really hard to get to know in the short runtime, but they are generally likable. However, it is a plot that is quite compelling, sequenced and doled out in a way that keeps the player wanting to know more. The end is cathartic and does resolve most of the questions the game raises, and I enjoyed it. Androger's sales numbers are not public, but they seem relatively low, somewhere between 10 and 40,000 units on Steam. This game is also on Nintendo Switch, however, so there might be more sales there. Despite the low sales numbers, the game has an overwhelmingly positive rating on Steam, was nominated for the GDC 2026 Game Developers' Choice Awards, and won the Emotional Impact Award at the Indie Game Awards in 2025. Despite its many limitations, I really admire this game as a work of art, and so I'm going to assign Androger 4 stars for its cultural value. The spiritual value of the game is also very high. There's almost no negative content whatsoever, with perhaps the exception of the protagonist's condition and some hints at how a few people respond to it. There is a lot of positive content in the game, which again is difficult to describe without spoilers, but I will say this. Love is portrayed well, and the game is overtly Christian without making that integral to the plot. The Nintendo Switch website says that the game is rated E for everyone, and I think the game is generally appropriate for almost all ages. But I do think that adults will understand and enjoy the game a lot more. The developer is Christian and does convey positive Christian themes throughout the narrative. For more analysis on the themes of the game, check out my biblical themes video for this game. Overall, I'm going to give Androger 5 stars for spiritual value. The cost of the game is going to be subjective. The cost of the game is going to be highly subjective for many. For the time poor, the game took me approximately 85 minutes to finish, although you could shave off 10 minutes or so if you were going faster. For the time rich, there isn't a lot of extra or optional content unless you want to go back and work on the achievements, which I doubt many will. Androger retails for $4.99 USD, which feels solid but not excellent value. Overall, I'm going to give Androger 4 stars for cost. Androger didn't look like the type of game I would normally be interested in, since I mostly play games for story or educational value. However, as I was scrolling through the comments, I noticed that some reviews mentioned that the characters are Christian. With the serious lack of Christian video games, I decided to pick this up and review it to support the developer, and I'm glad I did. This is not the type of game that everyone will enjoy, but if you do like visual novels, I think it is worth picking up and enjoying for an hour, like a short movie. I was so moved at the end that I want to see if I can persuade my wife, who is not a gamer, to play it. Based on the criteria discussed in the video, I subjectively assign Androger the rating of genre gem. That's all I have for you in this video. Bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If this video blessed you in some way, please consider watching some of my other videos, subscribing, sharing the video with your friends, or sharing with me some of your thoughts in the comments below.